Roles of a denizen. A content creator is a user that creates posts and is rewarded based on the quality of their content. A content evaluator is a user that helps assess the quality of content and enforces community standards. The evaluator is effectively taking part in a marketplace to curate content and is rewarded for early evaluation. A content consumer is a user that wishes to find and consume the most valuable content in a given subject area or within a community. A lair owner is a person holding tokenized ownership of all or part of a community lair. Owners are rewarded with a portion of all mining activity happening within their lair. Owners are incentivized to build the best community of content creators and evaluators.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the DENDAO call for today, June 8th, 2023. Hey, Joe. We do this on Thursdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific time. Pretty short agenda. Let me pull that up and just mention that this is open to anybody who wants to join, or you can just leave a reply to this agenda that's over on Den.Social in the DENDAO layer. There's a link to join at the top. If you go to the DENDAO layer and find this call for June 8th, scroll down. There's a link for the StreamYard call. You can pop right in here and talk to us if you click on that. Or I know we have at least one question in the replies, so you can reply with a question or just toss it into even just YouTube chat if you want, and we'll get it. Cool. So, hello, happy Thursday. Welcome to 3 o'clock or 2 or whatever time it is for you there. I had a late lunch and I got really sleepy, so now I'm doing that whole fight to stay awake and probably going to go brew a cup of coffee next, if I'm being honest with you. But that's all right. The biggest thing on the agenda today is that this month's proposal phase is open. Now, if you remember, last month I threw a ton of lore on the Australia layer, and I still haven't given that away. So still have a call out for Australians. And if you have an idea for proposal for a layer, there's instructions. So in the layer creation process layer, there is a post that reminds you that the proposal phase is open until Monday the 12th at 10 a.m. Eastern. And then after that, the commitment phase will open. That's when you get to vote on them. The commitment phase will open on Tuesday, the 13th at 10 Eastern. So if there's any proposals, I'll check in a second. Joe, maybe you can check and see if there are any while I'm reading this off.
There aren't. Yeah, that's
okay.
Nothing new.
Cool. Well, we're going to get number one by unique voter, the number one by lore committed. And if those happen to be the same layer, then we'll just get one, which I think for the pace right now is pretty good. We got a bunch of catching up to do on layers that we've produced without putting content in them. So I think that's perfectly fine. And that should be the way it works anyway. Sort of an elastic on demand. You make more when there's more activity, and you shrink it down whenever it chills out a bit. So I think we got a bunch to work with, so that's fine. If you have a very specific idea for a layer that you don't want to, basically, if you want to do a custom layer, if you want to do a private layer that is not public and it's invite only, if you want to even do a premium paywall layer, we have the initial framework for that. We can do all kinds of stuff. Anything you want to do, if you want to do something specific outside of this LCP, I just wanted to say that the LCP is the free way. You got to get community support, but you can also just buy one if you want to completely customize your own. So there's options there. So proposals, do check the existing LCP. Let me just change the window size here. There's a button here that says LCP. If you click on that, you'll get a list of the proposals that are already in. that if it doesn't win, it just stays in there, as well as the votes. If you vote for something that doesn't win, unless you withdraw them, which you can, the votes stay in there too. So all these, if you just run down the list, there's down to 3 figures, I think. Yep, there's 132 of them. So there's options. You might find that your idea is already there. Speaking of layer ownership, here is Greg from Rivet, who has probably the right personality to host a show that is long format, Joe Rogan style, cerebral. What are you calling it? The crypto Rogan experience as a launching point for something. So that was one that won the LCP that is going to be interviewing Joe one of these days.
Yep.
Right? I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, we got to get the first one on the calendar, actually.
Yeah. Cool beans. So read those. You can click on the layer. What do you call it? Name. You can click on the layer name. It'll take you to the proposal, so you can see who proposed it. And if you wanted to DM that person, you could do it by clicking on their name, and then clicking on the little box here, little boxy box, and then you can DM them and say, "Hey, what are you doing with this thing here?" And maybe they'll respond to you.
Or if you have a request, hey, would you mind, if you have a slight different take, if I would vote for this layer proposal, if you would, I guess, be willing to change the vision on it a little. It might not matter, because frankly, you could just vote on it and have enough weight to say, well, we're going to add this as a vision, right? So
probably more effective actually would be to go to the layer proposal instead of trying to DM the person. Those can get lost sometimes. Simply reply to it publicly and say, here's what I think. Because if you do that, other people can see it, and if they are like, oh, you know what, actually good point, I'm going to throw into that too. You can, garner some
of the
support.
Proposals are
right. Make it the vegan and vegetarian layer, and I'm in, but only if I can eat butter still.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So if you have an idea for one that's almost like something else already, probably just work with them and say, hey, let's team up here. Yeah. Shout out to Simply Cerebral. Good afternoon. Crazy morning, but awesome. It's been not too crazy for me. We had a good show today on World Blockchain, though. I know I liked the AI discussion we had earlier.
Oh yeah, it was a good one.
Yeah.
So that is the bullet for LCP 2023, and that is the only official agenda item that we have. We do have a question, and I'm glad that the two of you joined, because I didn't know how to answer the question off the top of my head, because it's in y'all's wheelhouse a little bit more than mine. So the question from I Am is, what would the steps be to establish DENDAO offshore, to either officially or legally, or even like, since it's a DAO, is it symbolically, like how do we do it to where DEN, for the parts that do need to be registered, it is a hybrid system. How do you do that? How do you offshore something, or how do you move something offshore, or do that thing? What does that look like? Not talking about costs. Just like, what does that look like?
Greg might be the best to answer the legal. The technical would be potentially hosting it in a different cloud. That might be a part of it. It might not.
Interesting. Okay.
Decentralization of the hosting would be another. But frankly, DENDAO itself, we have people all over the world, so they vote on the issues for all over the world. Maybe it doesn't matter. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, on the legal side, Greg, what would you do? Because DAOs are not necessarily recognized.
Oh yeah. Well, it's going to be different depending, and here's the kicker, right? It's going to be different depending on the host country you're looking to go to, right? If you're looking to go to, someplace that the United States has strong bilateral trade with in services, then you're going to have a situation where it's going to look a lot like what you've got here, because they'll have something similar to the Uniform Commercial Code in operation, and you'll just set up an entity that might be called something different, but would look a lot like what you would set up over here. But if it's something more like China, right, then you would have to have a host company be your registered entity.
So it depends on where you're going and what the rules are for setting up there.
Yep,
I think
exactly.
based on conversations we've had in the past on this topic, I think that the idea would be to go someplace that's friendly to companies that are building things that have never been built before, and because of that, there's not any like legacy regulation that maybe it's like similar to something, but it doesn't exactly fit into exactly the same kind of mold that people are used to.
Right.
So countries that are friendly to innovation, basically.
Especially ones that are doing a lot of custom legislative process right now to try to make their country more favorable. Like if you wanted to go to Ecuador right now and work with them to make DAOs legally recognized in some new type of entity structure, then you'd probably have an easier time of it than say going to China, for example, where you're going to run into a lot more sort of like the latest trends in the US, where it's more like you need to find a way to fit this into an existing legal structure, and we're not really going to play ball.
Yeah.
Right.
So I would agree with I am that we should continue this discussion in the weeks ahead. To add to this, I'm no expert in this matter, but I do know some various things. Switzerland, Liechtenstein, and a couple of others, depending upon what you're doing, are potentially useful. What do you guys think? I mean, if you had to give a top three places as candidates, what should we start looking at?
I was thinking about this a little bit this week because I saw a story. Now I don't know enough about it yet, but conceptually, I was watching. There's this concept city that Vitalik Buterin is pushing in Africa, where there's support from some local governments there that want to try something new. They're very open to that kind of thing, and I thought it would be an interesting approach to get involved somewhere. I forget which country it was, but there's definitely a couple of spots that are catering to digital companies in a way that puts them in a pretty good position to be a hub. What I'm getting at is I'd be interested in getting involved in some location that like there's collaborative opportunity with other projects that want to do compatible things, like governing a city. We have this behavioral governance experimental concept here, and it seems like an experimental digital city is a prime sort of thing that this would do well with.
That'd be amazing, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so something like that would be my first pick. Someplace, it doesn't have to be Africa, but someplace where there's some sort of emergent hub of new ideas. And then secondly to that, or maybe just as important or parallel to that, would be someplace that isn't just going to do the same shit that the U.S. is doing, where they act like it's fine and then say, "Oh no, actually we changed our minds and we don't support you anymore now that you've gone through the procedures and the expense of setting up here."
I would honestly really strongly recommend El Salvador because of the tax situation we set up.
Oh yeah,
because like if you take a company there, you're going to pay no taxes and you're going to pay no personal income tax. You're going to be living tax free for helping them build that economy into a tech powerhouse.
That's a good point. That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and that would just be, as far as the friendliest possible environment I can imagine. I think they're probably right up there.
Yeah, we're securing our governance model with your volcanoes. Essentially, let's do this.
Yeah, there's also Malta, but I've not kept up to date on.
And Malta's EU, so
Malta's dope though. I mean, as far as I don't know how many people are physically going to reside here. I'm not moving to Malta anytime soon. But as far as places that I've been that I feel like are friendly to blockchain, Malta. I hadn't thought about that, but you're right. Malta's open.
It's great, and it's also easy to get residency and all of those things. I think that would be a good choice. Now, I do the other cool thing about El Salvador is technically you can go there by car right from here. I mean, it would be a long drive, and some of the roads might be a little sketch, but you could drive there, which is kind of cool. The other one is actually kind of on the way. It's probably worth looking into Panama
Panama
would
for
actually
sure.
be pretty good
Oh,
as well.
there's also and frankly, I didn't know we were going to discuss this, and I've not spoken with him for a while. But one of our um, someone that I know really well, he has a friend, and it's some island nation, and they're still finalizing stuff, but they are making it's essentially a situation that is geared towards metaverses. So crypto
Hmm.
and metaverse
Are you talking
trying to
Bitcoin?
attract.
Talking about Bitcoin Island?
Nope. This is it's an established nation state. I just can't remember which
Yeah,
one
yeah.
it is.
The Bitcoin Island is under an established nation state as
Okay, it
well.
might be Seychelles or one of those. I can't remember.
Seychelles, yeah.
Seychelles,
Yep.
yeah. I can't
I
remember
also
though.
know that Italy is, especially Milan, are being super friendly to crypto users.
Really? Well, I mean, we have friends over there that and I would love to do that. I mean, if anything.
Yeah, if Italy ended up being, you know, an inviting regulatory environment, that would be interesting for sure.
Yep.
Mhm.
Now
Yeah.
you still, of course, would have to be a little bit concerned because you're under the EU umbrella still,
Yeah,
right?
of course.
And the EU is becoming increasingly tech hostile. So,
Well, and that is, by the way, if there were a model that were multifaceted, it probably would be valuable. That is that you would have potentially multiple entities that all work on this project together. And if because as it does happen, these regulations change overnight because some regulator decides that they're going to change them overnight, and you can say, okay, well, we're no longer there.
That's kind of what I would be looking at. Yeah. I wasn't thinking of the multifaceted thing, but I was definitely thinking of like, okay, well, as quickly as this stuff is evolving, are we just gonna end up someplace where we have this whole conversation again? We're like, oh, we thought this was gonna be,
Yeah.
but not anymore. Like,
And when we were,
you have people from the US, for example, visiting the UK, leaning on them to do the same thing that we're doing over there. And I don't know how those talks are going or whether they're going to do it, but it seems like there's a lot of pressure from the U.S. to just do what we're doing here everywhere, which isn't going to fly, but it's it's a thing.
Yep. And when we were setting up Dragon Scale, where we were going to let projects come in and get uh, measured scarce attention effectively, where someone could, and we think there's a working model, but it became way too cloudy in the US to pursue it all. But we had envisioned that when one of these new startups began and set out their utility token, that depending on the project and the utility itself, you might say, okay, that one would register in Singapore, whereas this one would register in Switzerland, and then they, and it would be a very flexible model, and because those things are extremely expensive to keep track of, and it costs a lot to do, to set up shop in some of these places. So,
Yeah, if I could wave a magic wand, I would set Den up and integrate it directly with the governments of the world, so that each individual layer could register wherever they wanted to under
that'd
the
be
umbrella
nice.
of this.
Yeah, that frankly is not a bad idea. And then that's the funny other thing is that that no one's mentioning, but I think is potentially the biggest monetization for SpaceX, which would be planting a flag on
Oh
Mars
yeah,
and letting you domicile an entity there.
Oh yeah, Mars is going to be the ultimate place to be, I think,
Yep.
when we get to that point. So they're going to run that place like a virtual democracy. And,
Yep.
so there won't even be representative government there because people will just literally be on the issues directly.
Yep.
yeah. Hey Elon, you need a governance platform for Mars, bro? We got you. That would be great. Yeah, they should do that. You're right.
On chain, scalable.
So yeah, good question. I don't know. We'll think about it and talk about it more later. I know that there's a lot of discussion from a lot of different projects on this topic. We've seen how aggressively the flailing has become in the U.S.
Yeah. Well, and we may still win here, so I wouldn't put it past because you see a resounding defeat for the SEC against Coinbase, and this universe looks a lot different, especially if we get rid of Chevron deference.
Yes, but I'm going to read that. So everybody, we should point to it, that article. But I do think we will win here. But the issue is, if we do win, it's still so up in the air. Like, say, even the proposed legislation to pull back what the SEC is trying to do.
Yeah.
I don't know that it fits all cases, because they are very myopic. They think, oh, crypto is this, and we're like, well, damn it, guys, it's also this.
Exactly.
And they're going to end up with a potentially a mess after it gets cleaned up.
Right.
You're talking about this article here.
Yeah. Yep. They're still thinking of it in terms, unfortunately, of the kind of disruptive tech we've seen with the web to this point, right? And they're not thinking about it in terms of protocol level innovation that's foundational, right? We're talking about.
It's odd to me that somebody could think that, oh, here's this new thing, and I know everything about it, and there's never going to be any more developments about it beyond what I already know, and I'm not even going to think about how it could be used outside of that. That's a really strange stance to take.
It is. It'd be like if you went back to the era of the beginning of email, and you're like, which regulatory agency should handle it? Well, it depends on what you write in the email.
But even if you're right, even if something is narrowly what you understand it to be, and you know everything about that, to then basically say that there's no way that anybody will invent any other use of it, or it will never evolve outside of this narrow framework that that it's apparently in your eyes. Like, to just think that there's like things won't ever progress or develop outside of an initial proof of concept is, frankly, it's stupid.
Well, but it also is precedented in this country. I mean, like, literally, they if you buy an Audi in Europe, you get rear-facing cameras. If you buy one here, they've shipped it over, stripped those off, and put flat mirrors on the side that can't adjust because because there's a rule exactly written into the regulatory code for construction of automobiles that says flat mirrors required.
Which is why Cybertruck has them and doesn't need them, but they're user removable kind of thing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I will say the other side of that is that the really sad thing is that all of us technologists, and not all of us, of course, but largely, are looking to legislators and the lawyers to tell us how and what we can do with our technology, which is the most absurd and backwards bullshit way to handle anything like this. And I saw and it went way deeper than I'd want to cover on this, but I did see an Anon posting something, and I need to probably push some of it over to Den, but there's no philosophy layer, about how this reality is so legal or legalist focused. And it was an interesting take on things, because it's like, why do we need a codified law to use something over here? Now, if this something over here caused harm or did something that would then require, sure, but in order to use this, you should not need a law in place. It's so backwards.
Right. Well, you almost just need a law in place that sits as a placeholder, so that nobody gets tempted to write a law later that would be ill-advised.
Almost like maybe a constitution with a First Amendment, maybe.
Right.
Probably.
That's why I was interested initially in Africa. Whenever was one of the first ones that I said. Not only is there that smart city concept, right, which is still just drawing board, like armchair discussion phase, but even I remember when I was in Miami 2021, either that year or the year after, I forget it doesn't matter. I met people from different countries who were here to try to cut through the noise, to try to talk to people on the ground about what they were actually doing. And there were even people, I met one dude from Africa who was here on behalf of his local government, who of all places went to the shitcoin conference to learn about what could potentially be done with NFTs, with like real estate, with like property titles and deeds and things like that, to keep it fair, because they have an issue with, organizing that. And so, any government that wants to listen to what's being done and say, oh, okay, well, here's how we think that we can put rules around that work for us, and go for it, instead of what you were saying, Joe, about saying, oh, well, if we don't have rules for it yet, you can't do anything until we write a rule, and then you can maybe do something at that point.
Yeah.
Anybody that looks at it from that point of view would be way better. And Africa seems to have some nations doing that exactly that way.
That's true. That is very true. And I think generally in the developing world, you're going to find a lot friendlier of an environment, just because the only parts of the world that don't want to see them fully develop are the parts that aren't local, right? Like they're going to be embracing anything that's going to help them get ahead of what's otherwise a relatively oppressive international order.
Yeah, maybe, like, I hate to put it like this, but treat them like I used to interact with. If we needed support for some event or whatever, and we needed an opener or something, we'd find somebody that was up and coming and hungry, and say, cool, what do you got? Let's do this. And maybe that's the attitude to take, is to find, not to like, kick and beg and scream and say, please, can I do this here? But find a country who wants to actually like use technology to leapfrog the nations that maybe historically have been holding them down, and say, let's play ball. What do you want to do? Because we're willing and able. So those are all things to take into account.
And it's probably wise to have a list of potentials that you keep even after you pick one too.
Yeah, exactly.
Because even if the place you end up starts off good, you never know what's going to happen. Like
maybe if some of these bigger companies started framing it that way openly, that point, maybe this is a delusion of mine, but if you frame it that way openly, and a lot of companies start openly saying, yep, we're going to go help your competition, USA, we're going to go help all of your competing nations leapfrog you unless you stop, maybe that'll help. Maybe that's something that can be done.
I would bet Russia is probably pretty friendly to crypto right now.
That's what I'm saying, man. Like, if you don't want to yeah. So that's a great question. I don't know what the timeline on that would be, but I will segue into something else. I've got a tab open over here for the Dragon Chain Legal Fund, and something that I don't know why I hadn't thought of this before, but I thought about it during, I think it might have been the after show for the World Blockchain Roundtable today. But I've got a service node that pays out rewards. It's a proof of stake service node. And I was thinking, I'm happy to actually point those rewards for a while to this legal fund. So Dragon Chain has spent, and I'm speaking for Dragon Chain and Joe here unofficially. So if I get something wrong, definitely smack me down and say, no, it's like this. But they've spent millions, literally millions of dollars, just for the right to exist and to write software and to innovate and invent technology and then use it. And they still don't know what they're supposed to do, right? So they're in if you don't know, Dragon Chain's there's a complaint by the SEC, and it's still a ways off before there's any sort of hearing or court date or depositions even kind of thing, probably late this year, early next year, before we see anything. The idea seems to be to drag this out. It's been 4.5 going on 5 years already, and the SEC is just really bleeding Dragon Chain out. Initially, they went after some of the customers as well. If you saw the open source money documentary, there were several. I mean, they've lost, I would say, billions of dollars in revenue because of what the SEC has done. And they've spent millions of dollars in legal defense just to try to have a conversation with the SEC about how to do this, about how to exist. So all that is to say that there is a legal fund page open on Dragon Chain. They haven't talked about it a whole bunch, which is why I'm giving it some more time here. And Joe, I'm gonna try to work with you to get Oxen on here so that I can just point all of my Oxen service node rewards here. I think that's an interesting way to maybe raise funds or just donate to charity. Is run a node and point the payout address for whatever network it is. Point the payout address to a fund that you want to support. And maybe I'll talk to the Oxen guys a little bit. I don't know them very well, but maybe I can drum up some support there to say, hey, anybody want to help fight the SEC or fight for what you believe in? Here's a legal fund that needs your coins to do that. So it's legalfund.dragonchain.com. You can donate with all the things. If there's a thing that you have that isn't on here, let us know. I'm sure it's able to be added. So that's where it's at. legalfund.dragonchain.com.
All right.
Other than that, that is the agenda.
About, open APIs and or other initiatives next week, right?
Yeah. So this week there's some timeline things, some other coding and focus that had to be focused on. And so we actually never got around to talking about the timeline for an open API. But it does look like it's going to be relatively straightforward. A lot of it's documented already because we had to do it for when we developed the iPhone app, the Android app, both of which are not retired, but what do you call it? You can't log into them anymore.
Yeah.
You can download them, but you can't log into them anymore. There's a whole series of reasons for that. But for that and the website,
who could log in, and I don't know how they're doing it.
Oh, interesting. Well,
yeah.
All right. Cool. Good for them. I don't recommend the apps anyway. I like using a web browser. I always have.
The browser has the full governance stuff too, which the app.
It has all the things.
Yeah. So
the apps never had the wallet in it. The apps have additional. I would hesitate to call them features. They had additional things added to them that were required by Apple and Google, and there was just some stuff we could and couldn't do. The website's the real deal. But my point is, the apps and the website all used the same API. They all share the same backend, which is a separate, disconnected thing, which we explained last week already. But it looks like since we've got a lot of that documented already, because there was like 3 different people working on 3 different front ends that all use the same API. So we've had to document it for that to an extent. A lot of that's pretty far along already. And then we would just need to document or standardize a way to request access for the authentication system. And then off to the races. Anybody can build their own Den.Social with any front end website they want. They can look however it wants. It can have whatever features it wants. And they can just say, yeah. And if they need other stuff, it's just a matter of at that point developing an API feature. It's like it's like way quicker to then say, oh, you need that functionality. Here's a guy to hit. Here's how you use it. Boom, go make it. So that's a really good step towards open sourcing that does not include open sourcing, but it gets us on the way there, and it gives us a very real ability to let everyone access it and build what they want. And the last thing I wanted to say about that is that it's probably a really good time to do it because Reddit is turning their APIs off. So if we could somehow leverage that for marketing to say, hey, if you have something that was built on Reddit and you just been kicked out and you want to build something with Den, here's our APIs. We're actually turning ours on while there's turning theirs off. I don't know I'm not a spin doctor, but there's opposite things happening there, and we're competing to an extent with them. So maybe that could be used.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I can see that being pretty powerful.
Cool. So thanks again, Simply Cerebral. I am for popping in. Also, Cerebral, don't think that I was saying that that you have to make a. Don't feel bad that you haven't made a proposal for a layer. You said that you need to finally get around to making one. Yeah, for sure. I was mostly just reminding people that now is the time and here's how we do it. But
to note. I thought the philosophy layer had already passed. I am proposed it. I just looked. So I'm going to try to push either by lore or if we get enough unique users. There's 7 right now, so if we got one more, I'd pay for it to be created, no matter what it ends up ranking. So we'll see what you do there.
Well, I will vote for that one for sure.
Yeah, that would be, it would be a good thing to put some good content. So
A layer where discussions relating to logic and philosophy are housed.
I love it.
Yep.
Cool.
World needs more of that for sure.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, like this word right here. Here's the key word for me.
Logic and reason.
Yeah.
Yep, it's awesome.
Yeah, my favorite thing about logic is how once you understand it and put it down on paper, things can be logical, and then you look at it and say, "Wait, but that's not how things are. Why is that?"
Right.
Yep.
Well, I mean, and I've always been a big fan of less wrong as well, which there is I think an opportunity for a home for that kind of
Less wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, not letting perfection be the enemy of progress, kind of thing. Cool. What else? That's probably it.
I think we're good.
All right. Right on. Well, have a good weekend. I'm going to go make some coffee or take a nap or both. Maybe I'll do the nap and then the coffee. There's possibilities.
Nice.
Yep. And then probably gonna have to spend some time eventually checking out the new update for No Man's Sky, right?
I was going to do that yesterday, but I jumped into Cyberpunk again, and I got lost until 1 a.m. and then I went to bed. So that's probably why I'm tired. That is why I'm tired today, actually. So
Cyberpunk will do that to you.
About every 2 weeks, I have an opportunity to spend an unhealthy amount of time playing a video game, and I take that opportunity, and then I regret it for a day, and then I get back to work.
I never regret that, but I never have that kind of time. Like it's way too. The only thing I regret is not having enough time to do that.
Yeah, it's like I said, once every couple of weeks. That's about it for me. So, all right. Boom. Here's a song from Y'all Weird called "Enter the Dragon." We'll see you next week. Have a good weekend. Bye.
Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best.
Adaptable, all capital, label radical yet rational. Adaptable approach is palpable if this animal is fallible. But that conclusion is laughable, so with for all detachable from the mandible, you see it now?